prehistoric hunter once poisoned an arrowhead, shot a running antelope, then walked away and waited. Not because the arrow killed anything, because the hunter understood chemistry well enough to know the animal would die hours later on its own. 60,000 years ago, before Egypt, before writing, before anything we'd recognize as civilization. For millions of years, before hunting licenses, before rifles, before anything with a trigger, our ancestors engineered hunting tools from bone, plant toxins, and physics that fed entire populations and drove whole species to extinction. Today, we're going through 7 levels, from tools so primitive they barely count as technology, to instruments so sophisticated they're rewriting what we thought we knew about early human intelligence. This isn't the version you learned in school. Let's get into it. Level 1. The Oldowan Chopper. This is the oldest hunting tool ever found. Not shaped, not designed. Just a rock, deliberately smashed against another rock until a sharp edge appeared. That's it. That's level 1. Found at Gona in Ethiopia and dated to 2.6 million years ago, Oldowan choppers weren't made by Homo sapiens. They were made by Homo habilis, handyman, a species that walked on 2 legs and figured out that one rock could improve another rock. No other animal on Earth has ever done that deliberately. The application was simple. You hack through joints. You crack open long bones for the marrow inside. You get to the calories that every other predator left on the carcass because they couldn't break in. Early humans weren't apex predators at this stage. They were strategic scavengers who arrived after the lions had eaten and cleaned up what the lions couldn't access. The chopper is where everything begins because it represents a cognitive threshold. The understanding that a natural object can be intentionally modified to serve a purpose. 1 million years before the first spear. 1 million years before fire was controlled. Just a deliberately broken rock that let something small and slow eat like something large and fast. Level 2. The gorge hook. Everyone knows the fish hook. Nobody knows what came before it. The gorge is a straight piece of sharpened bone, pointed at both ends with a notch carved in the middle where a line ties on. You bury it inside a bait ball. The fish swallows the whole thing easily because it's parallel to the throat going down. Then you yank the line. The gorge rotates. Both pointed ends catch sideways across the fish's gullet simultaneously. It's not coming out. Gorges appear across cultures on every inhabited continent because the problem, catching something that lives underwater and doesn't want to be caught, had this one elegant mechanical solution. They were carved from bone, from thorns, from human bone on Easter Island, where raw materials were scarce and people used whatever was available. The word gorge literally means throat. The tool was named for exactly what it does to the animal. The curved fish hook replaced it eventually, but the gorge worked so well that it survived in parallel for thousands of years. Simple, reusable, vicious. Level 3. The Levallois core. Here's the one that should genuinely shake you. About 300,000 years ago, someone, Neanderthal, early human, possibly a species we haven't fully identified yet, developed a way of making stone tools that required holding an abstract concept in their head before striking a single blow. The Levallois technique works like this. You take a large flint core and spend hours preparing it, trimming the edges, shaping the surfaces, building up specific patterns of ridges and angles, not to make a tool, but to make the core ready to produce a tool in a single precise strike. You're manufacturing the potential for a perfect flake before the flake exists. You see the tool in the stone and shape everything around it before removing it. Levallois tools appeared independently in Africa, Europe, and potentially Asia. Same technique, separate invention, because the logic was sound anywhere flint existed. The resulting flakes were thin, sharp, and perfectly sized for hafting onto spear shafts. Hunting points engineered through what amounts to a mental simulation run before touching the stone. Level 4. The bola. The problem with throwing a single stone is that you have to hit something. The problem with a spear is that it goes one direction. The bola solves both problems by making the weapon spread out after release. 2 or 3 stones, wrapped in hide or sinew, connected by cords of equal length. You spin it overhead and release. The stones separate, the cords spread into a rotating wheel traveling through air, and anything the system contacts, legs, wings, neck, gets wrapped and goes down. You don't need to hit the target precisely, you just need to touch it, Cave art in Patagonia shows bola use stretching back thousands of years. The Aztecs used them. Arctic hunters used them for birds in flight. The physics is the same in every location because the principle is universal. A spinning weighted system wraps around cylindrical objects reliably regardless of geography. The detail that makes this genuinely impressive. The cords need to be identical in length with precisely balanced stone weights. Too uneven and the rotation destabilizes. A hunter who understood bola construction understood rotational mechanics through pure practical engineering. No equations, just trial, error, and the occasional very unsuccessful test run. Level 5. The microlithic insert. Imagine a hunting point so small it looks like a mistake. A stone blade the length of your thumbnail, geometrically shaped, triangle, crescent, trapezoid, designed not to work alone, but to be mounted as one piece of a composite cutting system. Microliths appear around 50,000 years ago and represent a complete rethinking of what a hunting weapon needs to do. Instead of one large point that breaks when it hits bone, you use multiple small inserts embedded in a wooden or bone shaft. When one shatters, it's replaced. The shaft is permanent. The cutting components are modular and interchangeable. This matters more than it sounds. A large stone point represents hours of work lost when it fails. A microlith takes minutes to produce. Building a weapon from many small replaceable parts instead of one irreplaceable large part is a manufacturing philosophy that didn't reappear prominently until the Industrial Revolution. The Blombos cave site in South Africa contains microliths dated to around 70,000 years ago, 20,000 years before most researchers previously thought the technology existed. The humans making them were also making ochre pigments, using shells as containers, and producing some of the earliest symbolic objects ever found. The microliths weren't an isolated innovation. They were part of a complete cognitive package. Level 6. The toggling harpoon. A spear goes into an animal and can come back out. The barbed harpoon improved on this by making extraction difficult. The toggling harpoon made extraction geometrically impossible. The head of a toggling harpoon is designed to detach from the shaft on impact and rotate 90 degrees inside the wound. The point goes in parallel to the body. The moment tension is applied to the attached line, it pivots sideways. You are now trying to pull a horizontal blade through flesh and muscle. It doesn't move. These were carved from bone and antler, materials flexible enough to absorb impact without shattering the way stone does, critical when you're hunting animals in freezing water where you cannot afford to lose either the weapon or the prey. Inuit hunters refined this technology over thousands of years into instruments of such precision that researchers studying them today still find details of the mechanical design they can't fully explain. A single successful hunt could provide enough food, fat, oil, and material for weeks. The engineering exists because the stakes were survival itself. Level 7. The poison arrow system. This is where prehistoric hunting leaves the physical and enters the pharmacological. In January 2026, researchers published confirmation of something the archaeological community had suspected but never directly proven. Arrow tips from Umlatuzana rock shelter in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, dated to 60,000 years ago, contain measurable chemical traces of poison from Buffon distica, the giftbulb plant, a toxic bulb still used by traditional hunters in the region today. The arrows are tiny. The stone points, called microliths, are too small to kill anything on impact. That was never the point. The poison enters the bloodstream. The animal runs. The hunter follows. Hours later, the toxin, a slow-acting alkaloid that disrupts neuromuscular function, does what the arrow couldn't. The animal weakens and goes down. You never needed to get close. What this requires cognitively is staggering. The hunter needed to know which plant was toxic, know how to extract and concentrate the compound, know the correct dose to apply. Understand that an animal shot with this arrow would not die immediately, but would die eventually, and would need to be tracked. Grasp cause and effect across a time gap of hours. The same poison signature appeared on 18th century arrowheads collected by European travelers in the region, meaning this exact recipe was passed down continuously for 60,000 years. Not writing, not recorded, just knowledge transmitted from hunter to hunter across 3,000 generations, surviving intact because it worked too well to change. Which level genuinely shocked you? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into what our ancestors actually understood about the world around them, subscribe and hit like. We've barely scratched the surface.